Let's get real. Audio is difficult to capture well. We often deal with reverb, which is sound bouncing off of walls. We invest in a lapel microphone because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learn how to acoustically treat our environment that we're filming in to make that sound better. But then the lapel microphone starts to sound stuffy and closed off. And it doesn't sound natural in the context of the environment that we're filming in. Let's talk about a few ways to capture audio in your home studio environment. Stick this on the tripod. Let's get rid of oh, hey. I was editing this video and it got to be about 25 minutes long, so I'm going to go ahead and split it into two. Oh, that's good beer, Jose. The first half is going to be about recording the audio. The second half is going to be about editing the audio. I'll leave links so you can find the other half. Anyway, enjoy the video. So let's jump onto the computer and talk about the editing side of things. Because a lot of tools go unused by young creators because they don't realize what a multi-band compressor is, expander, or your compressor, or your EQ. Let's just talk about that. So I'm gonna hop into the Fairlight page of DaVinci Resolve. Now, everything we're gonna talk about works in Adobe Audition, Adobe Premiere Pro, Pro Tools, Logic, Final Cut. Anything that has full-fledged DAW or audio editing tools, these tools that we're going to talk about will be in there. And if not, you can download a plugin or so on to add these tools. I'm just going to be using tools that are included in most programs. I have a preset that I've made. I'll load this up. We'll talk about how this preset works. If I just use this preset as is, it's going to sound weird.
Often deal with reverb, which is sound bouncing off of.
This preset was not made for this specific situation. So we're going to get rid of a few things. We don't need the pitch shift. We don't need echo. The de-esser we will need. The EQ we're going to have to adjust. Let's talk about EQ first. I feel like that's a good starting point. So this is your EQ. Walls. This is what it sounds like and without an EQ, and then turn on the EQ. A lapel microphone because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learn how to acoustically treat. That makes it sound a little more clear, a little more warm, but it's a little bit too crispy for my liking, so I'm just gonna dial back those high frequencies. Environment that we're filming in to make that sound better. But now I don't know if you can hear that low end rumble, but we're just gonna go ahead and take that out. We don't need any of that rumble. But then the lapel microphone starts to sound stuffy and closed off. And it doesn't sound natural in the context of the environment that we're filming in. You can hear a slight difference. The EQ has improved the audio a little bit. So let me go over what we've got here. A little boost to the high end. I cut 800, and the reason I did that, it's boxy sounding. Let me show you. Let's talk about a few ways to capture audio in your home studio environment. Audio is difficult to capture well. We often deal with reverb. See how that makes it sound off of walls. A little less boxy. And we invest in a lapel microphone. It just cleans it up a little bit. I like taking a little bit around 800 hertz out, take a little 400 hertz. This has to be adjusted according to your microphone, according to your voice, 350 to 400 hertz. Sometimes I even do 420. Then I boost a little bit in the low end because I have a very nasally high end voice. So I like to get a little bit of that low chesty sound. And over time we learn how to acoustically treat. Makes it sound a little bit warmer filming in. And then I take out the low-end rumbles that are completely unnecessary for vocals. Better. But if I dial this up too high, it's going to make the voice sound thin. To capture well. We often deal with reverb, which is sound bouncing off of walls. See how the throatiness, the low frequencies, kind of the warmth comes back in when we dial this back. Let's talk about the high end. High end's pretty basic. Lapel microphone that I bought from Tascam is not particularly bright, so I like to brighten it up a bit. So that's basically what I do with an EQ to make that sound better. We talked about EQ as far as the tone of your voice. Let's talk about EQ as far as the ear-piercing frequencies that really cause ear fatigue. Let's say you have long-form content such as a podcast. You don't want to cause ear fatigue. You're going to want to boost up a little bit, but not in such a way that it's going to damage audio, because when you boost something, everything's going to sound bad. I find that my ears really hate the 1100 frequency. I mean, I think I'm not too unusual in that everybody pretty well hates that 1100 frequency. So get kind of a narrow band here and kind of sweep along here. Sound bouncing off of walls. And we invest in a lapel microphone because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learn how to acoustically treat our environment that we're filming in to make that sound better. See, everything sounds bad when you boost it up that much. So you don't necessarily want to do that. If you hear a frequency that you really don't like, if you have a microphone that produces a frequency you really don't like, and you think it's going to cause ear fatigue, 3-minute videos, not so bad. 20-minute videos, somebody's going to click off because their ears hurt. Subconsciously, I've done it. Listening to Marques Brownlee, I've had to click off his videos because he doesn't put a de-esser on his vocal track. So if you hear a sound that you particularly don't like, you can just drag this to that sound. Sometimes 1500 bothers me, sometimes 1900. Find a sound that you don't like and then cut it. You can widen out that band to make it sound a little smoother, but you don't want to widen it too much because cut a lot of the juiciness out of your voice. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this because I actually don't feel like this microphone in particular needs it that bad, and this video in particular isn't going to be that long. You can tell me in the comments if this audio was fatiguing to your ears. Let's go on to compressors. Depending on the sound you're going for, if you want that real radio sound or that Don Lafontaine sound, you can have a hard compressor like this. All you need is maybe 2. We invest in... See, that just sounds so compressed. Well, we often deal with reverb, which is sound bouncing off. So you dial that back down, and so it doesn't sound quite as quite as compressed, a little more natural, but still has the benefits of compression. It brings up quieter sounds, brings down the louder sounds. You have less dynamic in your recording. For music, this makes it sound a little more mainstream. Pop music uses a lot of compression to make their mixes sound louder. I don't particularly like it in music, but on the voice, especially radio voices or voiceovers or Don Lafontaine, compression sounds really good. Basically what I had there was 10 millisecond attack to allow more crispiness to get through. Basically it delays the attack of the compressor by 10 milliseconds, so the consonant at the beginning of a word can be still very loud, clear, before the compressor crunches down on the word. Consonants can be loud, but vowels are generally where the loudness lies. We set hold to 0 and release set to 100 milliseconds so that it's a nice, smooth release. You could set that up to 250 milliseconds. You've heard of a de-esser. I know you've heard a de-esser because a de-esser is one of the most important audio effects on your voice. Everybody uses a de-esser, from music to voiceover to radio to movie scores. You need to use a de-esser. Marques, I'm looking at you. MKBHD doesn't use a hard enough de-esser, and I'll show you what a de-esser does. It takes away that sibilant sound in your voice. In a lapel microphone, because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learn how to acoustically treat our environment that we're filming in to make that sound better. We invest in a lapel microphone because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learn how to acoustically treat our environment that we're filming in. We invest in a lapel microphone because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learn... It's a subtle and yet very important thing to just take the harshness out of your consonants, your T's, your S's, your C's, your K's. It just takes a little bit out to take the harshness out, and it's much more pleasant to listen to. Most de-essers come with presets. You could just use like the male preset or the female preset. Most of the time, the female preset S is around 7,000 hertz. The male S is around 4,500 hertz. You could also add D-shush, female D-shush. You can add multiple de-essers. This is a preset I made myself. That's the one that works for my voice. The lisp that I have, that works well for me and my microphones. Let's move on to a really advanced tool called the multiband compressor. EQ and a compressor squished together, for lack of a better explanation. What I like to do with this is really get that Don Lafontaine sound, our environment that we're filming in, to make that sound better. But difficult to capture well. We often deal with reverb, which is sound bouncing off of walls. And we invest in a lapel microphone because they sound better. They do. Okay, so you can hear the difference. It sounds very in your face. It sounds very crispy. You need to use this in moderation. This preset that I have is made for voiceover. It's made for that Don Lafontaine sound. So this is not what I would use for a YouTuber. I'm going to dial this way, way back to make it sound more natural. But this is a very hard, harsh voiceover multiband compressor preset. It sounds great when you're doing a voiceover. We don't need a whole lot of bass. We're in an untreated environment. There's a lot going on around us. There's other sound happening, air conditioners, car doors slamming. So we don't need a whole lot of bass to poison our ears. And over time, we learn how to acoustically treat our environment that we're filming in to make that sound better. But you can still hear that bass, but remember, we're gonna roll off that bass with the equalizer here, so it doesn't sound quite as bassy. But then the lapel microphone starts to sound. Now this sounds way too crispy. You heard that squeal from the door. That hurt my ears. So let's dial back our high end. Stuffy and closed off. And it doesn't sound natural in the context of the environment that we're filming in. Very crispy. So let's go ahead and put this de-esser on here. A few ways to capture
make that sound
audio
a little bit less crispy.
Your home studio environment. Okay, so that sounds a lot better. Let's go ahead and turn on our compressor.
Difficult to capture well.
We often deal with reverb, which is sound. So it's a definite improvement, but I'm still not happy with the sound. I can dial this in later. Let me go over what the multiband compressor does. The way a compressor... I just had one of those phone chargers burn up on me, so that light's not gonna work no more. Show must go on. A multiband compressor dials in a specific frequency and then treats that frequency range. A compressor would treat the whole track, but it's only talking about this one. So it's kind of like an EQ in that you can boost up specific frequency or you can cut that specific frequency, but it also compresses the dynamics. You wanted the bass to be loud all the time, you would use a multi-band compressor for that. You want to get a emulation of a certain microphone, you would use a multi-band compressor. So what we did here, our low frequencies, 120 and lower. Mid frequencies are between 120 and 4,500. Our high frequencies, 4,500 and 10,000. And then you have your higher frequencies, generally are not super important vocal recordings. They're there. You don't want to get rid of them entirely. They're not the main thing that is contributing to the clarity of your vocals. For Don Lafontaine sound, you want to boost up your bass so you get that bassy sound like Don. For this case, we want it to sound natural, but also to represent a more expensive lapel microphone, since this is like a $20 lapel microphone. Cut the bass a little bit. We're going to cut mid frequencies because it's a very nasally microphone. And then we're going to boost the high frequencies because there's not a whole lot of air to this microphone. It's kind of dull in the higher frequency. Let's listen to how this sounds.
Difficult to capture well.
We often deal with reverb, which is sound bouncing off of walls. And we invest in a lapel microphone because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learn how to acoustically treat our environment that we're filming in to make that sound better. But the natural in the context of the environment that we're filming in. Natural in the context of the environment that we're filming. I hope that helps you. Those are some basic presets that I use. All right, so let's talk about outgoing track, your main master mix or whatever, you're going out, you need to make sure that your audio doesn't sound too loud. You want to keep a consistent audio level. If somebody's listening in their car, their ears don't start bleeding when something loud happens, like a car door slam. Those sound effects are a little bit too loud. A limiter is basically going to keep you from making your audio too loud. Now, I like to set mine at -6 decibels for my limiter. It just seems to work well. It doesn't cut too much off to where it sounds unnatural, but it cuts enough off to where it's not hurting someone's ears. We often deal with reverb, which is sound bouncing off of walls. And we invest in a lapel microphone because they sound better. They do sound great. And over time, we learned how to.
So let's adjust this up to 6 decibels
to make that sound better. But it just cuts the tips off of your waveforms. That's all it does. Keeps the loudest thing from getting too loud. A little limiter doesn't hurt anybody. You could definitely overdo it, and you can definitely underdo it. I used to actually limit to 0, and I've learned from my mistakes. Limiting to -3, -6 is much better. The Joe Rogan experience is about 16 to 14 LUFS. He limits to about -6. Just keep that in mind. These are a few of the software things that you can add to your audio to make it sound better in the editing process. Oh, hey, you're back. Hope that helped you. I'll leave links so you can find the other half of the video. Cheers. I hope this helped you. Leave in the comments any suggestions that you have for your audio. This video is getting incredibly long. Thanks for sticking with me. Hope this helped. I already said that. Okay, bye.